Yo, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports, and it's exciting times wrapping up the spring practice season in 2024 with the annual Blue-Gold Spring Game. And let's talk about all of the ancillary things that happen surrounding the game off the field first, and then we can talk about the game itself, some of the takeaways from it, and what's next for the Mountaineers in this episode. So first and foremost, I got to give a lot of credit to Mountaineer Nation. Awesome job. I talked about this in my video a couple of weeks ago that was highly controversial if you ask the fans on the West Virginia football Facebook group that has thousands of fans that are incorporated as part of it, about whether Mountaineer Nation cares, like showing up to these spring games, because I've been to quite a few of them over the course of my lifetime, and this was one of the best attended spring games of my lifetime. 18,000 fans was the announced attendance. Still, when you think about it in in totality and put it into perspective nationwide, that's what Mountaineer Nation should be doing. Close to 20,000 or more every single year. And I know the weather was perfect, and it had some really cool things that were incorporated, mainly because of some of the people that were involved in this game. But when you're seeing, like, Colorado get a full max crowd for a spring game, Oklahoma annually has over 50,000 or more, even more. Penn State, same difference. Like, if Milan Puskar Stadium can hold 60,000 fans, like 20 should be the baseline, I feel like, for this day to support this program. And because, like, that's what I was hoping for. Like, if you brought in, say, a Marshall, and I don't want to derail this and go back down the rabbit hole of that conversation again, but I like seeing that whole one half side, this whole half side back here all the way down, pretty much filled up. So if that's one quarter, or upwards of 1/3 of the stadium's capacity, I think that's what this program should be showing if it's one of these top 40 or top 25 programs in the nation that many fans think that it is. So awesome job by all who attended. I'll talk about the second piece, and we're talking about the special announcement that what came out Thursday for Friday about Pat McAfee and Pat White being the guest coaches, celebrity coaches for this game. Like, I had a wedding to go to. Ceremony was at 2:30. I live in Washington, so to drive, only stay for about an hour, to drive right back and make it in time for the ceremony, I just thought that was a lot to be asking for. But trust me, I struggled with the decision all Friday to make it down because I wanted to see Pat White and Pat McAfee in action. That was so cool to see some of the videos on social media. I kind of had a feeling that McAfee was going to take over the bar scene in Morgantown that Friday night, and it sounds like he did. So good for him. Awesome to see Reed Williams involved with him. Pat White also having dinner with him. Like, I don't feel as if, maybe today's players and younger, because I was doing the math right before I started recording this video. It's like kids who are probably freshmen on this team were probably born the years like Pat White was tearing it up as, freshman through senior. So they might not even, know him. They are just of legend, what they can watch on YouTube, so on and so forth. So it's like, man, I'm right probably at that age of, like, and a few years younger who know everything there is to know about Pat White and every single game he played. But it's like, I think that it spoke more to the upperclassmen players, because even though they were still young, probably 5 or younger whenever Pat was tearing it up for the Mountaineers, it's still like to see in the same shot, watching the game on ESPN Plus, out of one corner of the shot, Nico Marchiol looking down and talking to his head coach, Pat White. It was like past meets future all in one shot. So it was awesome. I love that. I think that helped out with the attendance. I'd love to know if you were one who thought, I may not go, to the spring game. Wasn't really planning on it. But then when you heard the announcement that Pat White and Pat McAfee were going to be back in town from Morgantown, that you said you got to check it out. I'd love to know. Love to know your thinking process in that. Leave your comments here on YouTube. But, others who were in attendance, Dante Stills, Tony Fields, the greatest of all time, head coach Don Nehlen. Awesome to see Coach Nehlen out there still at his young age in his 80s. So awesome to see him out there, and all the money that was raised for WVU Children's Hospital. And then Huey Mack, who I talked about in the pre-show, was going to do a pre-game performance. Awesome to see here. 5 minutes in now to this video, got to talk about the uniforms. And what do you know? And it was really great. I'm very, very pleased with this. West Virginia stuck with the country roads type themed uniform with some tweaks to it, trying to go old school with new school with the stripe down the leg, keeping the Flying WV logo on the shoulders, but still looking very similar to that country roads jersey that was unveiled at the Backyard Brawl in 2022, and then once again in 2023 with the all gold that was also worn in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. So having a blue jersey as part of it, I thought we were going to get a black one. I thought, there was a lot of hubbub on social media, and there always is, especially whenever the basketball team got a new black uniform for this year, this past season. But no black uniform, at least now announced at the spring game. Maybe that's something that's announced over the summer of when they potentially will unveil those. I don't know. Sounded kind of like Ren Baker was alluding to that during the broadcast with my boy Nick Farrell from Waynesburg University. So I love the uniforms itself. Love the gold, love the blue, love the white. I would almost as if the blue one said West Virginia across the chest instead of the white. But I guess the thinking there is if they're worn, the blue and the gold being worn at home, it's West Virginia. But if you're on the road in an opponent's stadium, and we know how West Virginia has to travel hundreds and thousands of miles away for its road games, especially in conference, then you need to have the state across the chest. So love that call. Love the Mountaineers for the gold to be used kind of, interchangeably with the blue. I would have just went with the blue having West Virginia across the chest instead of Mountaineers. I don't know, kind of, but I think they're perfect. I really do. Having the big numbers, the more traditional look, I guess you could say, like the old ones during the early Dana Holgerson era, and then even the ones that were for these past 40 years were just kind of blah. Were just kind of basic, didn't have as much intricate detail. You could just kind of tell that there was a changeover of wanting to get away from what was the traditional Big East and do something new in the high-flying days of the Big 12. Had Shane Lyons' paw prints on it, but now, got Ren Baker in there, used some old school flavor with some new school design. And I love it. So love all the combinations that they unveiled. Want to see a black one too. I think that would be cool to use in some sort of night game, whatever game that is this year. So all in all, a lot of fun surrounding off the field. I know after the game, seeing so many pictures across social media of different fans, young and old, getting out on Mountaineer Field after the game, taking pictures with players, and the players just happy to have the fans being there, signing autographs and getting pictures with them. That's just awesome. That's awesome to see this environment, this culture, this fan-friendly kind. I mean, there are just so many kids, worlds were made during that Saturday. To get involved, get to meet Pat McAfee, to get to meet Pat White, to get to meet the players. Holy cow. That's a dream come true for so many of those young fans out there. And to create that kind of welcoming environment, that both the mutual respect from the players to the fans and the fans to the players, that's awesome to see that we didn't get there as part of the Dana Holgerson era. So loved what I saw from that. Also, big recruiting weekend. So bringing in a new transfer player, defensive back, Dantes Fagan from Charlotte. defensive back who predominantly played corner. So interesting recruitment there being present for the senior day. Also, let me get his name just right here. I think it was, hold on, Jack Sawardo. Didn't have as part of my notes. Sorry, no. Jackson Aquardi. Sorry, I don't know where I came up with that. Maybe I was thinking of fantasy baseball or something. But anyway, Jackson Aquardi, a big 6'7", 240 pounds, so got the size, that's for sure already, as a rising high school senior. So for the 2025 class, 3-star from DeForest, Wisconsin, according to Rivals. So committing to the Mountaineers, being now the 6th commitment for the class of 2025 for the Mountaineers. And then also Davion Taylor, a 3-star. And when you see players who are already ranked as rising juniors, then they're on people's watch list. So Davion Taylor, a 3-star, only with the prospect, I feel like, of going up, playing for a powerhouse in southwestern Pennsylvania in Aliquippa. You saw the video, kind of went viral across social media with him meeting Pat McAfee after the game, and McAfee had so much reverence for the Aliquippa football program and was dapping Taylor up after saying he committed. So that's awesome, some momentum already for the 2026 class. I can't remember a time when, or maybe just one here or there, so I hope he sticks. But, players who are, again, rising juniors already committing to West Virginia, great to see. It's been a while. Hope to see that number only increase as time. Maybe a video for another day and time to talk about Chris Henry Jr. And what I think West Virginia should do to get him to be in Morgantown for 4 years, or at least 3. So let's talk about the game itself. Gold team beat the blue team 35-24. A lot of awesome stuff off the field. On the field, a little boring, I'm not going to lie. Watching it Sunday afternoon, it just kind of felt a little bit repetitive. What I'll ultimately say, my summary analysis, this is how I felt about this game as I watched it, especially in the first half. It just seemed like the defense knew exactly what was already coming from the offense, and given the the quarterback is down already as soon as you touch him, kind of thing. It was, and I was kind of amazed. I was like, are we really playing touch football with the running backs and the receivers too? Because I can't tell you how long ago, it wasn't even that long ago, that we were having full contact, full speed. I thought that's what you did in a spring game. Why are we wearing full pads if it's just two-hand touch? I mean, I guess for the line, so everybody wear pads, but still, like, it was two-hand touch, not full tackle to the ground. Obviously wasn't going to be tackle to the quarterbacks, but that's what it seemed like I was noticing throughout the first part of the game. Is the defense knew what was coming in the passing game. I talked about this with the Marshall video, is this defense knows its offense's tendencies so well. It knows the play calls. It knows the signs for the play calls. So you as the quarterback are going against a defense who already know what you're running. So what did Garrett Green and Nico Markey all have to do for most of the game? Checkdowns. Just checkdowns, run the ball. For the gold team, it started out as Clay Ash at running back. For the blue team, it was Jalen Anderson. And then Ash giving way to Judah Price at one point. I think the gold had Jaheim White on its team. Then Judah Price came on for the blue team. Not a whole lot of action by Jaheim White, and definitely didn't make the kind of splash play that he did in 2023. No C.J. Donaldson due to just routine maintenance, I would say. And no Travion Dunbar just yet. No Dior Hubbard just yet, not in early enrollees. I think that makes a huge difference. I know, not to go on a tangent or a side note, but wow, us getting to see the early enrollees who are true freshmen, I feel like that already puts them a leg up on the guys who are going to start over the summer. It's like you've already had, 15 practices or so, plus a spring game, and you get to show your abilities out on the field and to the fans. I just think that makes a world of difference already in the fans' perception of these players. So what an advantage that they get, I feel like, over their true freshmen classmates who aren't going to be here until after their high school academic careers are done. So that's what I say about the defense. And Garrett Green was seeing that, that the defense was just dropping back and blanketing in coverage. So he had nothing else that he wanted to do but run. And that is Garrett Green to a T. That's the blessing and the curse that you have with him at quarterback. But I would say that more times than not, he chooses right. And he has the ability with his incredible speed that if he runs, he can make something out of nothing. He can make a play. I would rather him run the ball and try and make something out of perhaps nothing or want to do that than throw the ball into coverage. So if that's what it means, then, so be it. And Markey was doing some of the same at the same time. So I can't put so much stock into the defense and criticize the offense, but you could just tell also, especially when Green was at quarterback and in the first half, the defense was playing Garrett the way that Garrett has to be defended, is pushing him on the outsides to not let him escape the pocket, keeping him contained, forcing him to make those kinds of throws. And I think that's just emulative of, probably the best case example in 2023 was the Oklahoma game. That's what Oklahoma did to him for 4 quarters, is they, stunted on the ends of the tackles, on the outside shoulders, pushed Green inside the pocket and said, you either have to run straight toward us, where Danny Stutzman is, waiting for you in a spy to try and run, or you have to make a pass from within the pocket, and 3, 2, 1, one of our outside ends is crashing as hard on a bull rush on Wyatt Milam, on Doug Nestor, on each side. So if that's the way that opponents are going to play West Virginia in 2024, then this offense, and this is what I'm already kind of looking ahead to give you a bit of a teaser, is what can this offense do in the pass game if it's not going to be, boom or bust and run the ball. What I mean by that is you got your play action fakes on the RPO, so that already takes about a 1 second on the fake out of the shotgun. So if you're giving 1 second of a bull rush already, you have 2 seconds if you're Garrett Green as a quarterback. If the ends, the defensive ends for opposing defenses, make some sort of move, beat either one of the 2 tackles, and you're in on, and the defenders are in on you. So what can West Virginia do? I'm looking at you, Neil Brown, Chad Scott, Bilal Marshall, from a wide receivers, combination packages to work in more curl routes, to work in more slant routes, to work on more in routes, to work on more crossing patterns, and then Garrett Green hitting these guys. That's what I want to see more of. I think it's hard when you're looking at a sideline view rather than a front on, like you're playing Madden or NCAA or a Skycam angle to see what the quarterback sees. But if WVU's defense in its zone blitz system, was just dropping back into coverage, the underneath routes should have been more open if you were calling them, or they were more late developing type of routes, double moods, slants, go routes, post routes, stuff like that. So that's what I'll be interested to see. I think that for this game, for this glorified practice, West Virginia was just trying to keep it simple. Not get anybody hurt, which was the number one overall thing. And that's the other thing, the component to this. So I'm not critical at all. Don't think I am of Garrett Green in this game. Is Garrett Green only knows how to play one speed, and that is full speed to win the ultimate competitor. And so on a fun day where the score really doesn't necessarily matter, everybody just wants to have a good time, fun in the sun, and we're doing these quirky drills with linemen throwing passes and running routes and kids out on the field and Pat McAfee's friend. That's the thing, is if you unleash the beast that is Garrett Green, that's and you're holding him these parameters. What's the line that Chad Scott uses him? He's a lion in the zoo. It's once you unleash that lion outside of the cage, Like, he's going to take off and try and want to make plays. I know he was getting frustrated at, like, being, I think it was Caden Beiser or somebody else, like, barely, like, jumped out of the side to throw their arm out to act as if they were trying to tackle him. But the refs credited that run, him being tackled that way. And in a game, there's no way Green would be running right by the defender and route to a first down pickup. So I think that's where it's hard to take anything away from this glorified practice, at least in the case of Garrett Green. But that's what's really the question will remain all over the summer, is what will he and the West Virginia offense do to amplify the short to intermediate passing game? Because, like, those little dumps out to the running backs and the checkdowns and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, they do get you yards. Like, even the wheel route that, like, Jaheim White scored to win against Baylor, like, utilizing those. But I think that there are some more opportunities for guys over across the middle of the field. Cole Taylor obviously didn't play in this game. And then some of the other wide receivers, just kind of a quiet day, I guess you could say, by them. Let me just see. I don't remember seeing Cole Taylor. Yeah, he did. He didn't catch any passes in this game, so no, he didn't play. I would say for the other quarterback for the blue team, Nico Marchiol, looked much more poised, looked much calmer, looked like he'd been there, done this before, so it wasn't any big deal. Could enjoy it maybe a little bit more that Garrett Green could and for the leader of the gold team. And we saw a lot of both quarterbacks throughout the game because I'm already forgetting his name. He was just there for a cup of coffee. Sean Boyle hitting the transfer portal earlier in the week. So Scott Keene coming on as the third quarterback. I loved what I saw out of Marchiol. And then also with Keene. So, like, I know I was saying on the pregame video, if West Virginia loses both quarterbacks to injuries, potentially, you might have to try something with Rodney Gallagher or Traylon Ray at quarterback. I don't know. I mean, crazier things have been done before with West Virginia quarterbacks. So Keene, like, didn't look as if he never had played football before. I'm trying to think who that quarterback was off the top of my head. In 2017 when Will Grier broke his finger against Texas and they brought that guy in. Chris Chugunov ended up having to transfer to Ohio State or something. I think he just became a student. Like, he quit football. Like, oh my gosh. Maybe the worst quarterback West Virginia's had over the course of the last 20 years. But anyway, like, Scott Keene looked a heck of a lot more developed than Chris Chugunov ever did. So I know we haven't got to see what Khalil Wilkins can do necessarily just yet. And if it comes down to both Garrett Green and Nico Marchiol being injured, the season's pretty much already in the tubes. So keeping both, at least one, if not both, healthy. Because that's the thing with Green. Green already knows he has the confidence. And if you watch the NFL draft over the course of this past weekend, like, an opportunity for a quarterback of his size, he is going to have to put up video game-like numbers, like Kyler Murray, if he's going to prove to NFL scouts that he is an NFL draft pick by this time next year. Or he's just going to go out there, put his body on the line, and he's going to make this one heck of a season to remember and make plays. So nothing's stopping him. This season is going to be ride and die with Garrett Green, and I'm all for it. Let's go. From what he did in 2023 with the way he can run the ball, like, willing to, run into the battle. William Wallace, Garrett Green is our leader, and, to better or worse, that's who we're rolling with. But if he does somehow get injured, or this season just goes by the wayside, I don't even want to get down that road. Nico Marchiol looks much more primed to step into that starting role, more so even than he did in 2023. And remember, he won the Pitt game, he won the Texas Tech game, so that's awesome. Defensively, this is where I was most excited. Zay Jennings, wow, I was shocked. I did hear the interview. I think this was with the In the Gun podcast with Jed Drenning, Owen Schmidt, Wes Euler, and they talked to Trey Nair, the director of recruiting for high school recruiting for West Virginia, and he talked about Zay Jennings at length. So I kind of had him in the back of my head as a guy who I wanted to see some make plays. He's fast. He's wiry. He's a playmaker. He's not afraid of contact. He's getting in there. So first and foremost, I'm most impressed by Zay Jennings. I think he also had an interception in this contest. Obi Onwuka, really impressed with him. I think a guy who could challenge for, depending upon how many outside linebackers that West Virginia decides to start this year. If it's truly going to a 3-4 base defense with 4 linebackers, or if it's sticking with what it's been running for the last 5 under Jordan Leslie, Vic Kenning, in a 3-3-5 with a Bandit as your outside linebacker, then he's probably third string, behind Ty French, behind Tyron Bradley at that Bandit position. But I liked what I saw out of him. Josiah Trotter put on a show. Wow. Athletic. I mean, that is why West Virginia sold out to bring him into Morgantown, and why it really hurt, even before the season started, that he couldn't be in an old gold and blue uniform, because I bet he would have played his first year's worth of eligibility last year. So had to redshirt because of the injury. But, man, he looks like a guy who I think is a game 1 starter. I think it's going to go down to the wire. It's going to be a game-time decision for Neil Brown and Jordan Leslie on who starts at that middle linebacker position, Trotter or Reed Carrico. Because Trey Lathan's locked up that will linebacker, so it's going to come down to those 2 guys at the middle linebacker. But, wow, the pick he had on Garrett Green. Green didn't see him. He came across the middle, and that was impressive. Even for just a glorified practice, that was impressive. And I don't care if he knew the play or whatever. It was bam, bam. It was split second, throw, hit him square in the hands, full speed in motion to score. Like, that's what you see out of a guy whose brother played in, gets drafted in the 5th round, and whose dad played 10 years in the league. And then Aiden Garnes coming up with the biggest surprise, the last interception late in the game. So I know he did get beat on the one-on-one drills. I thought the one that was against Garnet Hollis Jr. was the one that Preston Fox won in the drills between the first and second quarter. Preston Fox is just so technical. I think he understands his body limitations, but he has that ability within him, and he can make an extremely athletic plays. So I was critical of Preston Fox after that big play. That was a game-changing play in the Penn State game last year, and said you don't throw the ball in that situation to Preston Fox. But ever since that game, from last year to this year, I'm confident you got to have Preston Fox as part of this starting 4 at wide receiver. Getting him involved in the special teams game, whether he's the starting punt returner or it's Rodney Gallagher, or he's part of the kick return unit. But the guy just makes plays. Some of the catches that he made in contact last year, I do not question Preston Fox whatsoever. To make that kind of move, technical on his routes, knows where he needs to catch the ball, secures it in on a one-on-one in a all eyes on you moment, and then he just makes plays. And then Hudson Clement, same thing with his ball skills. Awesome ball skills. Where I want to see a few more flashes out of Rodney Gallagher. Gallagher's probably a better pure athlete, perhaps, than Hudson Clement. But Clement just makes catches. He just makes plays. Defenders all over his hands trying to knock the ball out of him, and he secures the catch around him. He just knows how to play football. He knows how to make catches. So, impressed by what I've seen out of Clement in that contest. Same with Fox. And Traylon Ray leading all receivers, doing so more so the damage in the second half with 4 catches, 55 yards. I'm telling y'all, I've heard enough of the others across the interwebs and social media with their shows talking about how West Virginia needs to go make a splash in the portal for an experienced veteran wide receiver, and I can't disagree more. Truly, I cannot. That West Virginia is set with 5 pass catchers. And that's not including a wide receiver. You're also throwing in Cole Taylor at tight end, and you're throwing the 2 running backs in White and Donaldson in there who are going to catch a lot of passes. So you're set at your receiving core. You really are. I don't understand why there's this the trepidation of putting it on guys who are in their true sophomore seasons. Like, I mean, David Sills, by the end of his freshman year, was making plays, and had he not transferred, look what he could have done probably as a sophomore. Gary Jennings getting involved, go back to Dakeil Shorts getting involved as sophomore. Like, let these guys develop while still playing. They don't need to be buried on this depth chart. Otherwise, you're just asking for them to potentially leave. And you can't have 4-star players leaving, willingly hitting the transfer portal because of depth chart for all that I said last week about the NFL draft and that GMs and scouting guys want to give more leniency, more time for players that they draft. I know West Virginia hasn't had a 5-star recruit since Noel Devine in 2007, but excuse me, but 4-star recruits, coaches are willing to give a little more leniency and time to develop. So that's why I'm not putting any pressure on Rodney Gallagher to pan out, break into the top, be one of the top 2 receivers on this team for this next season. Like, if he's the 5th best receiver right now, behind Clement, Preston Fox, Traylon Ray, Jaden Bray, like, that's okay. It's really okay. I want there to be incredible competition. Raise that competitive floor, because you're going to add in another 4-star, your top recruit out of this class, who we haven't yet to see, in Day Farmer, who's going to get added to this group in, a month, 2 months? And then you're getting another guy who was a fringe 4-star player for whenever he committed, but ultimately on signing day was a 3, in Brandon Raymond, who's a big high school player at St. Joseph's Prep, one of the best high schools in the country. So those are 2 guys who I feel like are going to be great additions into this wide receiver room. So there's no need to go out there and spend big money and NIL dollars to bring one in. One last thing on the game itself, Michael Hayes does what Michael Hayes does and just drills field goals, hitting a 47-yarder. Like, I kept saying, I was like, he'll hit this. And I know there was no rush. There was no line in front of him. Bam, he nails it. And then R.J. Koken, 54-yard field goal. Woo! Awesome. So, you got a backup guy who, if somehow, when the punter, when he got hurt, Ollie Straw, when he got hurt, I think it was in the Duquesne game, the guy kind of hit him late on the end of his toe, and he tweaked his foot, and he had, didn't know if he was going to be able to play the next week. Heaven forbid, and you very rarely see kicker injuries, but it's nice to have another kicker that that can go out there and make some big kicks. So that the fact that they have Hayes, who's automatic, awesome, love that. And R.J. Koken, hits a 54-yarder in the spring game, just hopefully that he can be better and can be the backup. So, obviously, what's next? Now, spring practice is over. I don't know if the semester is just over just yet, or if it's finals week this week or next week. But then it's going to be, once again, it's Mike Joseph's team. Players will take some summer school classes, early enrollees get involved. That's kind of so that they can lighten their load for the fall semester, to take a summer class or 2 whenever it's not as hustle and bustle. So it's Mike Joseph's team, strength and conditioning, getting them involved, and then they can do, voluntary things organized by themselves. So I bet there will be some of that. You'll hear that over the summer, but the most part, they stay on campus, they go home for parts of time, and then we won't, be back until August. So it's kind of like a break that we can take to talk about football. There's always something to talk about football. But that's kind of it until we get into the, summer preseason. Immediately, and that's what you're watching, you're checking social media over the course of the next 24 hours, is who's transferring out, because the transfer portal closes for all the players who entered their names into the transfer portal by the end of the day tomorrow, are able to be recruited over the summer. Then they can start fall camp with their new teams automatically, even multi-time transfers. can start out in fall camp and play and be eligible for next season. So you've already seen some names. I think Dylan Edwards being one of the biggest. Transferring to Kansas State is the biggest impact that affects West Virginia for next year, moving from Colorado to K-State. And you've seen some other names already enter the portal, get picked up by some new teams. So it's kind of like, this is it. Otherwise, you're sticking with your team for the next football season. So as long as West Virginia, doesn't lose anybody off that indispensable list, and I don't know why they would. There are 8 guys, really. There are 8 guys that I could see potentially entering their name into the transfer portal for one reason or another. I think the number one, and this is all speculative, so this is all up for my total opinion of what I observe, is Jalen Anderson at running back. And I think this was talked about alongside with Justin Johnson during the end of the 2023 season. You couldn't keep both, not with Jaheim White firmly establishing himself as either the 1A to 1B with CJ Donaldson or the number 2 running back. So Jalen Anderson had the benefit of having one more year of eligibility over Justin Johnson, so Johnson wants to go out there and play somewhere. Does Jalen Anderson want to be the 2024 third-string running back and prove himself and better than he did in 2023? I don't want to talk about that, shortcomings of Jalen Anderson from 2023, but we saw both guys at running back needing spelled. We don't know yet what Travion Dunbar and Dior Hubbard can give you at running back, and they'll just be true freshmen, but they'll be entered into the fold when it comes fall camp. But most probably both of those guys will be destined for a redshirt year, so it'll be Donaldson, White, Anderson getting the bulk of the carries in 2024 alongside Garrett Green. So does he want that role? Does he want to go somewhere probably at the G5 level where he could be a starting caliber guy, getting one, RB1 carries? I think that's probably number one for me. Then it's just kind of all speculative from guys who are in their and I said this, if they're in their 3rd or 4th years, and they're not necessarily seeing the field, or they are, it's just on special teams. Are they comfortable? Are they settled kind of in that role and accepting that that's the, fate of their careers and they're happy to be a part of the program in that capacity? Or do they actually want to get onto the field offensively or defensively? Because kind of guys who I think are kind of stuck in purgatory on this roster, tight end Victor Wickstrom. Pretty clearly it looks like Will Dixon has passed him up as the 3rd tight end on the depth chart behind Traylon Davis, and then obviously Cole Taylor at the 1 as the pass catcher. And then a guy like two tweeners. I know this one guy's only in his 2nd year, only redshirted, but 2 tweeners who I just don't think have positions really on this team are Braden Dudley and Orion Fisher. I'd love to be 6'7", 220, but how many 6'7", 220 defensive linemen do you ever see? Especially at the Power 4 level and especially in the NFL. Homeboy's going to have to put on at least 40 pounds to play defensive line, or if he wants to be linebacker. So I just think he's kind of a tweener. I know he was just a true freshman last year, missed spring camp due to off-season injury, off-season surgery. So, he's already missed out on the spring. Does he want to just kind of? He's only used a red shirt, so he has 4 years worth of eligibility. Maybe he's just not cut out for the Power 4 level, but we don't know anything about him. But I think I would trust Obi Onwuka over him immediately. Then Braden Dudley, kind of a tweener, defensive line, linebackers. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up, I don't want these guys you're saying, Carson, you don't like these guys. Why do you want to see them leave the program? Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. Yeah. No, it's just West Virginia has to get under a 85 scholarship level, and they're already at 87. So if you add anybody more, which they just did with Dantes Fagan, that means that some guys have to come out. Unfortunately, that is the downside of the transfer portal, is because it's also not only you can get guys into your program, you can push guys out and essentially cut them. Jai Favris didn't practice in the spring, recovering from surgery. in his 5th season of the program. Still does have COVID eligibility to play in 2025. He hit the magic lottery ticket of coming in 2020, not having to use a red shirt, redshirted in 2021. 3rd season was his first true season in 2022. So 23, he's got this year and he's got next year. So is he going to see, unless like what happened last year, a Josiah Trotter gets hurt, Trey Lathan gets hurt, Ben Cutter gets hurt. Is Ricky Williams going to potentially, or even Curtis Jones, true freshman guys who are just as athletic or better than Jai Favris as incoming true freshmen? Does Jai Favris just want to be a special teamer for this team? I wouldn't be surprised. But if he's comfortable, he's been here 5 years, he can end up with a master's degree. He's an international player, can just say I played American football. Come away with a master's degree for free. I mean, more power to him if West Virginia wants to continue to fund his scholarship and keep that international pipeline open, essentially. Then 2 guys who I just don't know, headspace. I was kind of hoping to see or hear Raleigh Collins' name called more. And I know it's like, as a safety, you're just being asked to play coverage and defense. But name wasn't really called very much. He did have 2 tackles, so that's great to see, getting involved. But I want to see. But Raleigh Collins is also, as Neil Brown's wanted to say, a tweener. He's a guy he'd like to see Raleigh Collins come up and play linebacker. But if you look at the numbers for this roster, especially if you try and keep 3 starters, Raleigh Collins is a guy who's probably the 2nd string wide receiver, flex safety across 3 positions. If Jaheim Joseph is starting at 1, Anthony Wilson's starting at 1, and now you add in, and Aubrey Burks at 1, Raleigh Collins is probably the 2nd string at all 3 of those positions. But if West Virginia goes to this 3-4 defense, Collins is pushed down probably below Jaheim Joseph. So how is he feeling after this spring season? Is he still buying in? He's a 3rd-year player. If he doesn't see starting time, does he see a window of opportunity for continued development in 2023 to then be an immediate impact player and starter in 2024? I'd love to know where his headspace is, because I'm a guy who believes in him. I'm just wondering how he sees his development and role and all of that on this team. And a 3rd guy who we didn't get as part of the spring season, but I just feel like, you hear these stories, and this is why I even bring them out, is Jacoby Spells. So you're adding in Montre Miller, Garnett Hollis Jr., Aiden Garnes, and now Dantes Fagan, from who played predominantly corner, use across, and you brought in TJ Crandall. So that's 5 corners that you brought into this roster. And the guy who's a part of this program now going into his 3rd year, you've recruited all of these other players around him, missed the spring season. You just see this, unfortunately, with guys who get hurt. They're in their head. They have way too much time on their hands, not being out on the practice facility, being around the guys as much. They get a little bit isolated. They start thinking. They're on social media too much. Is Jacoby Spells... he didn't use a red shirt in 2022. Does he look at another opportunity elsewhere, potentially use next year as a red shirt, and then you have 2 years worth of eligibility to go and make a name for yourself somewhere? I hope not. I hope that's not the case. He was a 4-star prospect out of American Heritage High School, one of the best high school football programs in the state of Florida. So want him to be a Mountaineer, 4-star prospect, still a lot of hope for him in his career in Morgantown. Just when you add all of these cornerbacks around him, what does that say about that player and his trajectory for this program? This year, again, he's in a junior year, so his 3rd year now. So it's either you're redshirting him to preserve his eligibility for 2 more years, or this is when guys really start to contribute. I don't know for old Jacoby Spells. I hope that West Virginia, can keep the majority of these guys. Oh, and then another one I forgot to add at the very end here, wide receiver Jarrell Williams. Does all these, I'm focusing a lot on Rodney Gallagher and getting him involved in the program. Does Jarrell Williams now see E.J. Horton transfer? Does he see the guys who are coming in as true freshmen? He's a third wide receiver. Is he okay with being the sixth string wide receiver in an offense that is predominantly run? And get involved in special teams and all that jazz? Or does he want to go somewhere perhaps close to home? It's from Saraland, Alabama, so far away from Morgantown, West Virginia. Does he want to go, somewhere closer to home, or down to the G5 level, and get involved as a third-year wide receiver somewhere where he might have better prospects of making the field? That's a question for me. So I gave you 8 guys right there that I feel like are fringe, kind of, like in the case of Spells and Anderson, like high quality guys you want to keep as part of this program, but some tough decisions. Like what are the players thinking themselves? Do they want to play elsewhere? Not necessarily what does West Virginia want to do. Like when you think dynasty mode on NCAA football to try and make those hard cuts to get under the scholarship limit. You'd love to keep everybody if you could. So you hope if it's just perhaps 2 guys who leave the program, and then you get to that 85 scholarship limit, it's like, we're good, we don't need to make any more cuts, we're under the limit. But then if you want to go out there and make some moves, and I think to my great segue, what to target in the transfer portal, I think nose tackle. If the injury to Corey McIntyre is true and he's already done for next year because of a torn ACL or whatever in his knee, you're down to Fatorma Mulba, you're down to Hammond Russell, and then you're down to a true freshman in Nate Gabriel at really nose tackle. Now, you can do some creative things with Sean Martin, Eddie Vesterinen, TJ Jackson. We know they can do that. But can you add another competitor into that group? Either a guy who's on a 1-year kind of deal or a 2-year deal, or do you want to get kind of a developmental guy who would see the kind of snaps that Corey McIntyre would have in 2024? Maybe in totality fewer than 20 snaps, 25 for this entire season if you're counting on Mulba and Hammond Russell. Or do you want to go out there and you got your NIL money to spend and you want to go get a guy like a Demonic Williams from TCU, who's the number 1 defensive player in the transfer portal, and you want to go get a guy like him, bring him onto this team and be an immediate impact starter? How much better do you want to see this defense? Do you just want to add depth, or do you want to go out there and get a starting caliber kind of guy over a Mulba, over a Hammond Russell? I think that's the one position that you got to go get somebody. Something, again, if you're trying to get to this 3-4 defensive scheme, and Neil Brown says he has 6 linebackers that he is very confident in playing, significant starter snaps, then that's okay. But I'm just thinking outside linebacker, looking up and down the depth chart, Tara Simmons is a senior, Tyron Bradley is a senior, Braden Dudley, as I mentioned, is a 4th-year guy, would have a 5th year next year if he stuck around the program, but again, hasn't really played any significant snaps defensively. So, you have your young true freshman, don't know how much development they're going to necessarily need. Ty French is on just a 1-year deal. You have Obina Onwuka, Orion Fisher, who I really think would ultimately, at his weight, would have to play a linebacker or not on the defensive line, or he's getting pushed back. And then you're pretty set in the middle and Will. Your Mike and your Will's pretty well set, but it's kind of like your bandit. If you want to go to 2 outside linebackers, do you want to potentially bring in somebody to play or to redshirt and to be kind of behind Onwuka? You don't know necessarily where Makai Byerson's going to come in as a true freshman. Is he going to be a stand-up outside linebacker or a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end? Kind of looks like what Elijah Kinsler is giving you already, and that's another name. I liked what I saw out of him on the defensive line for in this spring game. And then ultimately, if Anderson hits the portal at running back, I think you got to make a tough call. And these coaches would know better than all of us because they're the guys who know how well can the 2 new true freshmen, Dunbar and Hubbard, come in to potentially be a 3rd string or 4th string running back. Or is a guy like Clay Ash, who I think outplayed by what my eyes saw. I think Clay Ash outplayed Judah Price to potentially come in there and be like a fourth, fifth string kind of guy. Do you want, if you add another running back into that room? Because, I mean, I'm set with C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White taking, 60-40 of these carries, or, and Anderson getting maybe 5 to 10% of the carries out of the running backs, because we know Garrett Green's going to run the ball a ton. So you don't need, it's almost like break class in case of emergency. You don't need a running back now, but you may need a running back come the season, but you can't do in-season transfer portal kind of moves. It's not free agency like the NFL. That's the difference with college football, is you got to load up with your roster before the season starts, and then you're stuck with it for 12, 13 games. So very interesting. I know I'm 15 minutes in. I don't want to go much longer than this talking about a spring game, but I broke down a lot for you. So awesome job by the fans. Awesome environment in Morgantown. That's the kind of atmosphere that needs to be year in and year out at this spring game. So it was awesome to see. Awesome the investment. I'm sure that the university paid to, the travel costs to bring Pat McAfee and Pat White in. So I think that's only fair. So to bring these guys back, give them an awesome time, being out on the field, being around the players, awesome to see. Awesome uniforms. Play was kind of was expecting that. I don't think there's anything necessarily bad to take away from this game, but there were a few good. There were some good things, especially from some of the young guys on the roster who we haven't seen much from. I'm saying Zay Jennings, Josiah Trotter, Obi Onwuka, Aiden Garnes coming up with a pick, so that's awesome. And then still some things to hang out there to talk about for over the summer as we near this preseason practice and then into the regular season. So August 31st will be here before you know it. We're almost 4 months away. It's crazy. Going to watch the transfer portal over the next day and hope that doesn't ruin anything that I've said from this video. Hope to get the last word kind of on the spring game from all the guys on YouTube who make content for West Virginia football. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. Love to have you a subscriber to the channel as we buckle up and into the 2024 season. Got a lot to break down. I do tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. Wearing my favorite West Virginia shirt. All I need today is a little bit of Mountaineer and a whole lot of Jesus. Love this shirt, so glad I could wear it for this video as well. And I'll be back to, as always, with something new to talk about with West Virginia, whether we're talking basketball, transfer portal, recruiting if some big things happen, and then the baseball regular season kind of winding down, looking ahead to the postseason. So going to be a fun ride. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia.